And hello, it is time for Planning, Zoning, Rock and Rolling. I'm Town Planner Bill Nemser, and we've got a totally jam-packed episode of today's show. And the first thing we're going to do is catch up on last week's events, because I don't know how many of you had a chance to go out to Representative Kate Hogan's Boys and Girls Club fundraiser, her annual event held out at the golf club, but we were able to make it out there, and we just had a terrific time, and I think raised quite a bit of money, and it was a high-profile event. Today, I've also got my crack production team. We have Matthew back there, and I think you're going to be on deck today for the trivia game, right? Okay.
Yep.
And we've got the infamous Johnny G.
Oh, yeah.
And he's dropping in. Hey, did either of you guys make it to the Boys and Girls Club?
I did not.
What about you, Matthew?
I didn't either.
Oh, for crying out loud. You're home studying.
Yeah.
You guys are home studying. All right,
We
good.
have to attend to our studies.
Outstanding. Well, that's good. Did you know there's a couple of things going on right now? And first of all, I understand there is a dodgeball tournament of all things going on here at Maynard High. This is this an NCAA sanctioned event or?
Yes, it is actually. We're streaming live on their website right now.
Very nice, very nice. Well, we were not going to broadcast from there live because I wasn't alerted to this, but next time, Planning, Zoning, Rock and Rolling may be live from a local sporting event like that. That would be pretty good, right?
Right.
Okay, so today is also a very special day, and everybody knows, I hope you're in green. Green,
Yep.
green, yeah. Everybody in here is in green. All right, well, it's St. Patrick's Day, and so we've got tailor-made music selection for today's show, and we've got a very special guest who's going to be coming in just a few minutes. And also like to remind all of you that we do have our Village Memorial Park third workshop. The final workshop has been scheduled for April 21st, and this is your chance to come out and you can have your input into the final design for Veterans Memorial Park. This is something that has been an ongoing work, and we are absolutely thrilled with how it's gone so far. So I hope to see all of you on April 21st. Go ahead and put it in your smartphones now if you're so inclined, or in your day planner. But as we said, it is none other than St. Patrick's Day, and what's a better guy to start it with than Van Morrison? Would you think that's about right there, Johnny G?
I would have
All right.
to agree.
How about queuing up Mr. Morrison?
All right.
We're back here at Planning, Zoning, Rock and Rolling. I'm Town Planner Bill Nemser. Sorry about that little gap. You guys, no more dodgeball for you before the game and before the show. So my next guest is Paul Matthews. Paul's from the 495 MetroWest Partnership, and that's a very interesting organization that Maynard is now a member of, and I'm going to let him tell you a little bit about that. But before I do, let me give you a little introduction to Paul. And first of all, welcome to the show, Paul. Thanks for coming on Planning, Zoning, Rock and Rolling.
Why, thank you. It's an honor and a privilege.
The #1 radio show at Maynard High School. Do you know that?
I know that now.
All right. So Paul's background, let me give you a little bit of a summary. Before being appointed the executive director of the 495 Partnership in the summer of 2005, Mr. Matthews, that's you, Paul, right? Okay. I got
Yes.
a little formal here. Has been serving since 2004 as the partnership's public affairs program manager. In that capacity, Paul directed the partnership's advocacy activities, communication strategies, and public affairs, and served as liaison to municipal officials, regional employers, legislators. Okay, this is where we start saying, all right, we understand. That's good, but very impressive. Mr. Matthews came to the partnership with extensive experience in public policy, government affairs, communications, development, and municipal issues after positions in government and nonprofit associations. Paul holds degrees from Colby College in government and biology. Is that one degree, government and biology?
Dual degree. I thought I'd get my money's worth. Or
Okay.
More appropriately, my parents' money's worth.
Oh, very good. Oh, I have 4 kids. Don't tell me about that. Sore subject. And he's recognized by Worcester Business Journal as a 40 Under Award winner in 2001. 40 Under? What does that mean?
That would be 40 under 40 bills, so I was once upon a time eligible. I am no longer eligible, so the award means more the longer time goes on, I think.
That's actually okay, but it's nice to have there. Yeah, it's like okay, that may be something we have to institute here at the town of Maynard. 40 and under award winner, but
Or for your producers, you could do what, 19 under 19?
yeah, these guys are. Thank God they're here because you can see this board. I can't turn a song on, much less run it. Anyway, so Paul, now you have right now you live out in Worcester,
I do, as a matter of fact.
and got any kids?
I do. I have two: a soon-to-be 14-year-old son and a 11-year-old daughter.
So pretty soon the college jokes will stop. Your four older friends here.
Yes, but I am jealous. I have to say my kids are going to be pretty excited when I come back and tell them about kids only slightly older than them running a radio show.
These
So
guys-
I'm impressed.
These guys are awesome. And this
Crack
program,
production team.
it is, and they been with me 2 years now, almost 2 years. So let's talk a little bit about the MetroWest Partnership. Now, a lot of our friends at home probably aren't aware of what the partnership does, how it relates to Maynard, and can you give us a little bit of background just about what the partnership is in general?
I'd be happy to. So, as you mentioned in your very generous introduction of me, I started there in 2004, which is hard to imagine that it's now 2016. But the partnership itself is a nonprofit, and it was founded back in 2003 by a group of municipal leaders and private companies and chambers of commerce and environmentalists and higher education educators who thought that this region, if you look at where this region had been in the 1970s and where it was by the year 2000, they recognized that a lot had changed and that this region needed a public-private voice on behalf of continuing to succeed. They looked at Route 128, and no disrespect meant to our colleagues, to the east, but no one wants 495 to turn into 128.
And Route 128, for those who may not be familiar, actually is I-95.
Yes.
Right, okay.
Yeah,
Just
it's a tremendous success story for commercial development.
Oh, yes, oh, yes.
But part of, and you deal with this every single day, Bill, but part of what we want to strive for here is a balanced approach where we have the right mix of commercial development, the right mix of residential development, honoring community character in towns like Maynard.
Well, that's exactly what we're about. That was just like we rehearsed that one.
Yes, and we didn't.
It is. But so does a partnership, when you say public-private, I mean, I know some of our listeners at home, they've heard that term before, but can you explain pretty much how that works in the case of the 495 partnership? In other words, what does that mean to the average person at home when they deal with you? They're kind of dealing with a hybrid.
They are. So first off, I should say the organization itself is a small nonprofit. You're talking to 50% of the staff. The other 50% is back in the office working furiously.
Poor
Thank
Jessica.
you, Jessica.
I know
Yes.
Jessica. Yeah, sure.
And both of us come from experience sets where we worked in the legislature, and then we worked with communities and with business before we came to the partnership. So our role is to be able to talk to municipal leaders like yourself, like your Board of Selectmen, as well as developers like Saracen over at Mill and Main, as well as large companies, as well as legislators, and try to find common ground and find consensus on what this region needs for infrastructure and policy solutions to continue succeeding. Now, we're very fortunate that we're governed by a very large board of regional leaders, and to your point, it's public and private. We have some terrific committed public sector leaders, like, for instance, you serving on the board.
Oh, that's right. Thank you for the T-shirt too. That was very nice.
And Kate Hogan is on our advisory council.
Kate Hogan was in here a couple weeks ago.
Wow.
Yeah,
So I'm
she was-
following in strong footsteps.
Yeah. Oh, we've had some
Real superstars.
superstars in here, right?
I am impressed. Well, Kate is on our legislative advisory council, as are a number of other people like Senator Eldridge, Senator Spilka, Senator Ross, Representative Dykema, Representative Barrows. It's a mix of legislators from the House and Senate, Republican and Democrat, from up and down the 495 corridor. And frankly, a lot of the issues Maynard deals with are also being dealt with communities to the south that we also work with. We work with 35 communities. So the lessons you bring from Mill and Main matter to communities like Hopedale, which have Draper Mill, which is not as large as Mill and Main, but a lot of the lessons around your successful redevelopment can be used by them in trying to find a redevelopment partner for their own.
So, yeah, and I'd like to come back to Mill and Main, too. In a moment, we can kind of talk about your impressions of that today as we took our tour just after lunch. But before we move on, so is it fair to say that the partnership is also an additional, it's a bridge to the, really to Beacon Hill at this point, right?
It is, and it's notable when we were founded, which admittedly was a few months before I came, but from our founding on, the legislators and state agency officials have played a real critical role in their involvement with the organization, working with municipal leaders like you and the private sector, because we're not set up, our organization is not set up to be an antagonistic vehicle. We don't criticize or question what the legislators are doing, what communities are doing, what companies
Right.
are doing.
Yeah, that's not very good. Right.
Right. So our mission is to find common ground. And frankly, we wouldn't have been created if it weren't for the legislators saying, at the time, the chambers of commerce throughout the corridor were talking about trying to work together more closely. At the time, municipal officials were talking about trying to work together more closely. It was the legislators who got pulled in both directions and said to both sides, let's form one entity so we can speak more effectively. Because that way, when we go and meet with policymakers in Beacon Hill or on the federal level, you're going to have companies there and municipal officials demonstrating this is a unifying priority. It's not one that's divisive.
Well, that's interesting. And you have by and large, it's bipartisan supported, right?
It is quite deliberately so. But
That's
I mean,
terrific.
we've worked with Democratic administrations. We've worked with Republican administrations.
This is the request line. I think we have it. You want to grab that, Paul? No.
Sure.
I'm just kidding.
I'm like, you have a request line?
You got to be on your
Wow.
toes on planning, zoning, rock and rolling.
Wow, nobody warned me.
My guest is Paul Matthews of the 495 MetroWest Partnership. Anyway, so back to where you were. I'm sorry, before my mom called there. Can you give us a little more about that, though? So
Sure.
the bipartisan approach is very important to getting things done. I mean, I think everybody
Absolutely.
can recognize that and appreciate that in this climate. So do you look at yourself as an advocate as well?
I do, and where we sit, we're a non-ideological organization. We don't
Right.
take positions on partisan political issues. We're not designed to represent one viewpoint or the other. Our job and our mission is to represent the region, working with all sides. And that's everything from transportation issues, like advocating in terms of what the region needs in terms of equity in collecting revenue and equity in paying revenue out in terms of investing in our transportation system. So
Yeah, because that's a big one. I mean, I'm glad you brought that up because that was one of the topics I wanted to cover today was for our listeners, some of the, we've talked about regional planning a lot on this show. I mean, it's a planning geek show, so I mean, of course I'm going to talk about that, but in this sense where it's an economic regional planning, but really it is interconnected with all your other planning. It's interconnected with your community planning. It's interconnected with your environmental planning, and I mean, it's all that famous or now at this point infamous sustainability triangle where you have the interconnectivity. Can you tell our listeners and kind of give them an idea about how you see the region working together currently, and how you think it could work together better in a way that would where our residents in Maynard and of course the other communities would see a benefit for them. We could kind of explain it.
Sure. So I think when our organization got started back in 2003, there was a learning curve to undertake where we wanted to encourage the region to start thinking collectively. And I've seen a tremendous difference in terms of the level of awareness on the part of the companies, the developers, and frankly municipal officials like yourself as to actions can't be undertaken and addressed solely within municipal boundaries. They can't. And only by working together can this region really secure what it needs from the state and federal government in terms of infrastructure investment, in terms of policies. I mean, everything from Crosstown Connect, the intermunicipal effort that Maynard's involved in to solve transportation, services long term. I mean, by working together, that's leading to more successful outcomes.
Right, very cool.
And from a location standpoint, I mean, Maynard is really illustrative of the way there's an interrelationship between communities on an economic development front. I know from talking to you and Andrew and Kevin and your Board of Selectmen how the town views itself as sitting between 128, 95, and 495. And you think about that, you sit in a real critical juncture point where your residents can access jobs to the east. You can also provide housing and other amenities. I mean, your downtown restaurants are bar none. I mean, they're fantastic.
Yep.
And to be able to provide that to the companies to the west, where we work with IBM, their largest software lab in North America, their second largest in the world outside of India, is in Littleton. Cisco's third largest facility in North America is in Boxborough. And you've got Red Hat headquartered in Westford. When you start adding up the level of IT jobs that are growing to the west, and you look at your location, this is a real critical juncture point, I think, between the two economies of eastern Massachusetts and 495.
Wow. Here at Planning, Zoning, Rock and Rolling, I'm Town Planner Bill Nemser with my special guest, 495 MetroWest Partnership Executive Director Paul Matthews. So, Paul, you've been you're not new to Maynard. You've spent some time in Maynard before, and
I've
you
been very fortunate to, yes, thanks to
Right.
invitations from you and everyone else in municipal government.
Well, thanks, but before that, I mean,
Yes.
come on, right?
Yes, it's been interesting watching
You're
Maynard
more
shift
familiar
over
with
time.
it, yeah.
Yes.
And so, can you tell us a little bit with your experience now? I mean, you've been aware of this community for a long time, and what do you think about Maynard as a location? Because one of the things I hear in economic development meetings with different groups and stuff, and particularly with residents, that they're curious. I have always taken the approach that, well, we're in a fortunate place because we're in short distance to metropolitan Boston. We're at the western hinterland of MetroWest metropolitan Boston, but we're also at the edge of the MetroWest community. Now, there's always concern. Well, are we too far out where we're going to get ignored by both? And I haven't seen that to be the case. I've tried to emphasize, working with both. But what is your opinion about this? In your experience, now you've been coming out here for years. What do you think about that, Maynard's geographical position? How do you see that, and your opinion?
Well, it's like they say in real estate, Bill, location, location, location. And your location is phenomenal because you do sit between two, big economic centers. And I think you can see over at Mill and Main profound change, I think, happening in town over the last, I'd say, in the last year since Saracen took over. I mean, but broadly speaking, you can see tremendous changes in the town, I for the better, in the sense of when I talk to people about downtowns in our region and thriving downtowns and amenities, people always bring up Maynard. I mean, when I think about, I can't count the number of times I've eaten or gotten coffee in this downtown. I've gone to a different place every time. I've never had a bad experience.
Nice, that's good too.
And most municipal officials we work with would kill to have a downtown as thriving as yours with so many different ethnicities in the restaurants. I mean, in a lot of cases, downtowns are striving for that, but they don't know how to get there. And I was stunned to find out that the Korean restaurant you took me to for lunch had been in operation, you said, for 29 years.
Something like that, yeah.
And if I think about the history here, I frequently use Mill and Main as an example, as an illustrative example of the changing economy in our region. Because if you think back to it, obviously, first wave is it as a mill, running off the water power and the hydropower. And if you think about just more recently, you think about the fact that DEC was there, and that's really where digital's heartbeat originally was. And then you think about Monster.com, and then you think about companies going in now, like Acacia Communications and Stratus. They're real next generation companies with the next wave of economic expansion. And it says a lot to the town's future that companies like that are making a significant investment.
Well, the part of the investment that they're making is in design as well. They're changing some of the design, and one of the things that speaking on behalf of the town and all the people that really I've spoken to have been so supportive of this concept of opening the campus to the downtown, and rather than segregating it from the downtown, they're integrating it to the downtown. And it's not a question just of some additional retail. There's a small, roughly 10% of the campus is going to be retail or restaurants and so on. But more importantly, the increasing of what I would call privatized public space. So it's going to be, it's going to be a destination really just for the town to enjoy. And I think that on top of the whole concept that they have brought to this plan is really huge. Now, you got a good tour today. I mean, you really went from stem to stern. I think Henry took you for a tour today, but
quite literally, it seemed.
Yeah, it was. Well, we do get lost in there still.
Yeah.
Bring your breadcrumbs. And what were your impressions about some of the fit outs that were going on? And
well, I'm tremendously impressed at. So we were part of a meeting with you and Kevin and Andrew. Back about a year ago when Saracen first took over, Representative Kate Hogan had us all in her office talking about their vision for the property. And I think it's tremendously striking to think about 1 year ago to hear their vision, come back a year later and see the vision being not only actively executed, but some of it has already been executed.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about their leasing rate, and you look, it's quite striking. The simple stuff like them explaining that to clean the windows, they
Yeah.
wanted to hire a firm, and then they discovered, oh, we needed to set up a safety harness, attachment point system on the roof. I mean, these are
Which was not inexpensive for the.
correct. It is comical, though, to think about. Yes, I can see why before you want to hang off the roof, you want to have a secure attachment point.
Yeah, I would frown on not being anchored correctly,
Yeah.
hanging off a roof, cleaning window. I can see that.
Yeah, especially buildings of that size. So I think it's fascinating seeing the things they've done behind the scenes that are not immediately visible to those of us driving along Main Street or looking at it from afar. Yet when you see and are actually in the buildings, it's quite striking the level of change they've already instituted in a year and the results that's brought.
Well, it was a good tour today, and we also got a chance to look at the 129 Parker site, which is we're still at the permitting stage there and seeing where they're going to get through. But I'm very confident the direction the town is going. But this show, as you have noticed, is planning, zoning, rock and rolling, and there's some
Yes.
rock and rolling that's involved in this too, and some dopey trivia and this type of thing. But I'm going to do something I generally don't do, and I'm going to play a band that you specifically have recommended, and maybe you can tell how this links to St. Patrick's Day and a little bit about the band, and then we'll let you cue up one of their cuts. How's that?
Sounds like a great deal for me, and I appreciate the unusual level of courtesy, Bill. So when Bill asked me to come on, and I noticed it was St. Patrick's Day, I brought along an album cut by one of my best friends, my next door neighbor, John Gurton in Worcester, who's been playing with the lead vocalist guitarist since 1982. It's a band called Blackstone Cool, and it's primarily my neighbor John Gurton on drums, Mike Ladd on vocals and guitar, and Mira McLeod on fiddle. And they have specialized in taking old school Irish music and putting it into a modern rock and roll setting.
Very good. Now, I have to. This is a family-friendly song. We have nothing about killing your parents or any of those.
It is
nothing
indeed.
believable.
It is indeed
Very
family
good.
friendly, and I will note Bill is taking a great deal on faith in that he has not even heard the track yet.
Of course, I've heard it. I can't enough. I kind of show what I'd be running if I hadn't heard it. All right. Well, let's hear it. All right, and that was Blackstone Cool. Paul's Neighbors, I think, with a little Irish tune, and that was pretty darn good. That sounded, well, now after all this rigmarole, trying to figure out, does a CD or an iPod, and then we find out they're on Spotify anyway. So,
Well,
of course, I don't quite know what Spotify is, but the producers have assured me that it's there, and it comes out pretty well. So thank you for bringing that in, and maybe we'll play another cut in a little bit.
No sweat. And as I shared with Bill during the break, they are inspired. There's a planning tie-in. They are inspired by the digging of the Blackstone Canal between Worcester and Providence by
Very
Irish
good.
immigrants.
Really?
Yes.
Good. Did you know I went to an Irish bar for dinner the other night after a meeting? I went, and I was dying for corned beef and cabbage, and they honestly didn't have corned beef and cabbage.
So clearly it wasn't really an Irish bar.
Well, people have said that,
Was
and
the
I'm not
bar
going to name it. It's not
camouflaged
Maynard.
as an Irish bar?
I don't know, but I was like, I hope I can find some tonight because that's one of my favorites. But anyway, so this is Town Planner Bill Nemser with Planning, Zoning, Rock and Rolling. My guest is Paul Matthews. He is Executive Director of the 495 MetroWest Partnership, and he was giving us an overview of what the partnership does and how their role in Maynard is increasing and some of the highlights from his past experiences with our fair town. And so let's get a little specific about Maynard now, Paul. From what you see, and taking a regional approach to the economic vision for the region, how does Maynard fit in?
I think, as I was saying before the break, I think it's a great, very illustrative example of the region as a whole and its economy, where you look at the mill, right? You look at the different permutations in the mill, and when you Mill and Main is still a new topic, so a lot of people still think of it as Clock Tower Place, but we're educating them to that effect. But when you bring up the mill property, instantaneously people recognize that's Maynard. That's what the economy's like along 495. There's small towns, large mill, frequently very large mills,
Sure.
occupying a large percentage of the town with unique challenges, requiring unique level of collaboration between town government and the landowner. And I really want to commend you and Andrew and Kevin and everyone else for finding the ways that you needed to do to work with Saracen to get the property where it is today, which is quite striking.
Do you think one of the concerns we had, and we've been talking about in this show for some time right now, looking at our demographics, one of the things that we've been trying to rack our brains about how to approach is we're losing our 20, I think it's our 23 to 39 demographic, that age demographic. Now, there may be a number of reasons for that, but one of the things we're hoping is that with some of the new employment opportunities that are coming into the area, not just in the Mill and Main, but we have stuff going, a couple of other things in the works that are really going to provide some local employment options. We're wondering if we can attract that demographic back, and part of the way I think that we may want to look at doing it is making some housing that kind of reflects what somebody in that age bracket would want. Now we have a creative class here, and I don't mean just creative in terms of artists and cultural amenities, like, which of course we probably have as good as anybody, if not better, for that. But I'm talking about a creative class in terms of what Richard Florida, his description of it, where you have everybody from engineers to computer people and so on, and people want this sort of environment. The cultural amenities that we have here, the vibe, the livability of it. So one of the things we're trying to do is figure out how can we get that missing demographic back. And I guess what I'm saying is we linked it to jobs and housing, which is really kind of not such a big leap for a planner to make. But I mean, it is in this case pretty much the truth. But how do you see it from looking at it from a regional sense, and you looking at our little town here, our 5.3 square miles?
Well, it's interesting you bring up Richard Florida, because for a while there, about 12 to 14 years ago, seemingly I could not get an email without having a Richard Florida reference. I mean, he's definitely the godfather of preaching to the idea of not only landing companies, but instead looking at the long-term economic development potential of attracting strong talent and building your economy around talent, which then draws the companies.
Right.
So you're very right on target, Bill. I think my observation would be that a lot of what Maynard has working for it is what a lot of other communities are striving towards. I mean, you've got, as I said earlier, a thriving downtown with its own unique personality and characteristics in a way that grew organically and has been in place for a long time, where a lot of other communities are striving towards that. And there's very little government can do to make it happen. It's really the private sector, but you can encourage it, and this town's done a tremendous job encouraging it. You've got, with Saracen and Mill and Main and the growing tenants there, like Stratus, which is moving in. I mean, high technology jobs that, let's be honest here, are well paying, and that's a strong foundation. You've also, and I admit to some degree of bias on this, having a brew pub come in is a great idea. I cannot tell you the number of people who have said to me they're looking forward to the brew pub coming to Maynard. I hear that up and down the corridor, so well outside the boundaries of Maynard.
Really?
Yes.
That's good. So we figure that's going to be a good attraction for town.
I'm sure that has nothing to do with the people I'm hanging out with, but yes.
Right. Right.
That's a good economic development argument. I'm not simply arguing as a potential clientele of the brew pub. But I think the other pieces you have in place are working, to the point you raised earlier, working with the communities around you, I think, is really important. And when I pick up beyond town boundaries and look at what's happening to what I think of as to the west with strong employment opportunities, I think it really speaks to the fact that Maynard is part of a stronger whole, and the idea of Crosstown Connect and what you're doing to work with them to try to resolve and lay the groundwork for long-term transportation is really important, because that allows people to benefit from a strong downtown, benefit from employment, benefit from the housing stock here, but also, I mean, let's be honest, I'm looking at your production crew here who are a little closer to the demographic than you and I, but a lot of people, a lot of the millennials, a lot of people younger in the workforce, are looking for options that don't involve a lot of automobile travel, and they want to find ways to live and work close to where they are.
Isn't there a bit of irony that in this case, people thought about, is Maynard an employment hub or not? Well, of course it has been over the past 100 and some odd years, 150 years. It was always an employment hub, but the sort of the ebb and flow, that really the rhythms of the economy sort of controlled things. One of the things that I think is very important is diversifying the economy, and that's why I'm kind of thrilled with some of the new businesses that are coming in. That they're smaller, but they're a diverse group. We have like a larger employer, or something like Stratus Technology, but then we have something like Powell Flutes with 55 people or whatever working there, and Acacia and these, and of course we have so many entrepreneurs, in downtown and throughout Maynard right now that are really doing so many different types of things. So I think it's really important to emphasize the diversity of the economy rather than being a one-trick pony type.
I agree, and it's interesting you say that, because I mean, some of my experiences in Maynard have not been professional, have been based on I have friends who live in Sudbury and surrounding towns who have met me here for dinner, met me here for lunch, met me here for coffee, and to them, they come here from neighboring towns because they really enjoy the downtown, and it's a genuine draw.
Wow. Yeah. So I mean, so do you think, in your opinion, right now, and I will not hold it against you, but you think we're on the right track with that employment mix and trying to go after that demographic with, if the jobs are here, let's get a place let's get a place that's a community that's for everybody, that keeps what everybody likes about the small town feel, but really emphasize getting something for everybody in terms of housing in this. I mean,
I'm going to absolutely agree with you, Bill.
Keys?
I'm going to absolutely agree with you, Bill, and that has nothing whatsoever to do with you being on my board of directors and being one of my 57 bosses.
Oh, I forgot I was. I forgot. I didn't wear my T-shirt. That's good. Hey, tell me about also going back to the 495 MetroWest Partnership. I'm with Executive Director Paul Matthews. Going back to the partnership, what is this EDGE Commission? Now, Kate Hogan was in here. Representative Kate Hogan was in here a couple weeks ago, and she was talking about it a little bit. And our own town administrator, Kevin Sweet, is, I understand, on it. I don't know if he got a T-shirt, but can you tell us a little bit about what that is, and what's the difference between the partnership and the commission, and what kind of work are they going to be doing?
Sure. So the partnership was established to be a long-term voice and be here on a recurring basis, bringing both the public and private side together to advocate for the region. The commission is a very different animal in that Representative Hogan, who envisioned this back over a year ago, went to bat on the idea within the legislature and very quickly got Speaker DeLeo to sign on and had the language first authorized, working with other House members, Republican and Democrat, House and Senate, up and down the corridor, got it in the FY15 state budget. It created a commission which ended up being reauthorized a few months back. But the commission itself is intended to provide a short-term opportunity to bring communities like Maynard to the table with relevant state agencies like the Massachusetts Department of Transportation, Executive Office of Housing and Community Development, Energy and Environmental Affairs, as well as key constituencies like a private sector expert in transportation, a private sector expert in water, the Association of Planning Directors, the Commercial Real Estate Group, NIOP, the Public Works Association, Mass Water Works, so the MMA. So the intention is to pull together these constituencies and have a direct dialogue between communities like Maynard that, let's face it, are of a small size, and yourself and your colleagues exempted, of course, like limited resources, to be honest, compared to the state cities.
You got that right. You should see the planning department. Oh.
So the intention is to pull, and I really want to applaud Representative Hogan and her legislative colleagues for making this happen, because the state has a very well-established ongoing dialogue with its cities, its gateway cities. And gateway cities frequently have statutory programs set in place to benefit them on development programs. So the intention is not to detract from that, but the intention is small suburban communities need to have a similar dialogue with the state. You can't simply ask a town like Maynard to undertake a development of a residential scale that equals what would happen in Worcester or Lowell or New Bedford. It simply wouldn't be appropriate. So the thought is have a tailored discussion between small communities and the state on what the state needs to do to help towns like Maynard.
I see. So that really is good, and the fact that Kevin Sweet is on that is a huge.
It's excellent that
That's
Kevin's
great.
on it, because it was there were 5 municipal seats, and they were very there were a lot of applicants from up and down the corridor, from a multitude of different municipal officials, planners like yourself, town administrators, assistant town administrators, selectmen, if you can believe it, members of Board of Assessors. I mean, there were a lot of candidates. So for Kevin to be appointed is very important and illustrates, I think,
Who appointed? Who appoints?
the Baker Polito administration is actually in
I see.
charge of
Okay.
appointments. So,
So-
because they're gubernatorial appointments.
Oh, well, there you go. So, all right. So I guess that then, so compared to the regular raggedy old board of directors like I'm on, this is quite a jump, right?
I don't know about raggedy, you are my boss. But I will say that this is intended to be a short-term effort that results in a report in December
Very cool.
so that the state can get some definitive feedback on how it can adapt some of its programs to better meet the needs of communities like Maynard.
Now, one of the things that I like to do whenever we go over some of these topics for our friends at home that are listening, and to hear terms, and people ask me some questions all the time. And one of the great things about this show is I have 2 guinea pigs right here that I can always experiment on, and we can ask them questions and find out. And what I want to know is you used a term called gateway cities here.
Yes.
Now, you guys are both civics whizzes, right?
Of course.
I think so,
Okay.
yeah.
You guys know what gateway cities are?
Not a clue.
Matt?
No idea.
Okay. All right. So I get asked that question a lot. And why don't you explain to our listeners, can you give them a general idea what a gateway city is? I think people have the wrong idea of what it is.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Short of Googling it and giving you the specific definition, I can tell you off the top of my head, which is going back about 15 years ago, the state's larger cities collaborated and started a dialogue amongst themselves, as well as groups like Mass Inc. have a well-established gateway city emphasis, looking at the needs of the state's, now not Boston, but urban centers outside Boston that are
Right.
older industrial cities that have key unique challenges. So the demographic eligibility requirements are everything from the population level, the poverty level, the educational attainment level, qualify communities to be considered so-called gateway cities because frequently they're gateways for immigrants in the Massachusetts economy, and frequently they're gateways for companies in the Massachusetts economy. But they have their own unique challenges. So
And if I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's like you have to have a population over 35,000.
I believe
think
so,
something
yes.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So,
But politically speaking, it's quite interesting because there, I believe it's 16 gateway cities. And again, I'm not Googling this, those of you at home. So those of you who are, you're probably seeing this.
but you're pretty close on it. You're pretty close on everything.
There's a specific number of communities. There are other communities that would like to be considered gateway cities.
Mhm.
For instance, we don't have one in our region.
Right.
There are other communities that wish to be considered gateway cities and feel they have a credible case if you look at the demographics either in particular neighborhoods or census
I see.
tracts, or that they meet things like the poverty indication levels or the population level. But thus far, the definition has stayed, there's been a fixed number of gateway cities because, as I said, a lot of state development programs have
Mhm.
statutory requirements on gateway cities getting preferential treatment. So it sets it up so that gateway cities, there are specific incentives for companies to locate in gateway cities that are not, in fact, available to companies here in communities like Maynard.
All right. Well, that's so. See, now you guys know. If you're asked, we're blasting through this hour. We're off schedule. I know
Wow.
a little bit. All right. So we've got time for one more cut from. We're gonna go from
Blackstone Cool.
Blackstone Cruel, and you got a little story behind this one, and then you're gonna come back.
Well,
Are you gonna hang around for a little bit and
Yeah.
play because the next is our most popular segment, which is the Think You Know Maynard trivia game, sponsored by Andrew Scribner McLean, Assistant
Ooh.
Town Administrator. And anybody who wins, if we have an actual winner on this one, he will take you to lunch.
Wow.
Money
keep
is
that
no
in mind.
object. You go, and so it's worth staying around. But why don't you tell us a little about this next cut, and we'll.
I would
scoot
suggest I'm going to go with my favorite cut as opposed to my neighbor's, which is Irish Ways and Irish Laws,
Okay.
which I think is appropriate given St. Patrick's Day.
That's right,
It
St.
speaks to
Patrick's
the history in Ireland of.
All right, there we go. All right, Blackstone Cool. We are down to our last couple of minutes. Those guys are pretty darn good. Do they ever play around here?
They'd like to. They're on the festival circuit right now. And as a matter of fact, today they're playing at the Worcester City Common, and I'll be seeing them Saturday.
Oh, cool. Maynard is. We have more musicians here than I've ever seen any place I've ever lived. It is so neat, and everybody plays something. I have like my little advisory boards, and I get talking to them. I think like half of them they're always, we end up going into music, and one of them's playing here and one's playing there, and so it's really cool. I love that. Okay, so we're here with Planning, Zoning, Rock and Rolling, Town Planner Bill Nemser, and my special guest is Executive Director Paul. It's wrong. I messed that one up. So Paul Matthews from the 495 MetroWest Partnership. And Paul, you said you're going to hang around. You ready to play Think You Know Maynard? This is where we get a little serious in Planning, Zoning, Rock and Rolling here. But there is a lunch. Andrew Scribner McLean, take you to a lunch of your choice. And you were talking about the restaurants here. You like it? This is it. Okay. And today we're gonna Matthew. You're in today.
Yep.
Okay. Now did you win the last one, or what? Who did you play last?
I'm trying to remember.
Played Dave Griffin last.
Oh, Dave Griffin. I think it was. Yeah.
I think you played Dave Griffin, and I want
you
to
play
say
Andrew
I might have played Andrew Scribner.
It was. We've had some bloodbaths on here for this. I got to tell you, I'm okay. Now guests get to go first. Now, I'm going to throw. There's a question I had to recycle because everybody missed it so miserably at one of our other, rounds, and I'm going to start with this one again and see if my producers were paying attention too. But you have to see if you can answer it first. And okay, the mean travel time to work in Maynard for workers 16 years and over. I'm going to give you multiple choice. Okay, what's the average travel time to work? Is it 30.3? That's 30 minutes, 3 seconds. 25.7 or 42.1. I'll read them again. Average travel time to work for workers 16 and over in Maynard. 30 minutes, 25 minutes, 42 minutes.
Is this to me, Bill, or the
No, it's
room?
always the guest. Always the guest first,
Oh, okay.
of course.
42 minutes.
All right, Okay, you can pick up a point here, Matthew. What is it?
I'm gonna go 30 minutes.
You went down. What kind of
So
sandwich?
wait a minute. So I rule out one answer, so he gets a 50% increased odds of actually selecting the right one?
Yeah, that's how we went.
I'm going to go second on the next
No,
question.
we started losing. We lost listeners at this game when we made it too difficult. We need winners. We need bells and stuff. And lunch is getting a little closer for you, my friend. Okay, now it's up to you, Matthew. Harry, what year did the Fine Arts Theater originally open? 1929, 1964, or 1949? That's 1929, 1964, or 1949.
I'm gonna say 1929.
Okay, Paul. Now it's your whole. Okay, so what year did the Fine Arts? Have you seen the Fine Arts Theater?
In passing, I've not had the pleasure of seeing it
Fantastic. You got to go. It is definitely worth it. Bring the kids sometime. It is a very cool.
I definitely will.
It's a venue we don't really pay enough attention to on this show, and I'm going to rectify that because it is it's a treasure. Okay, so but what year did it originally open? 1929, 1964, or 1949?
1949.
Tie score, Johnny G.
Ooh.
Oh, we got a good one here.
Wow.
We got a good one.
With a knife.
Oh, boy. All right, you can seal a deal and be dining with Andrew Scribner McLean next trip in. And he is. Let me tell you, he doesn't. He just sometimes he just goes and has the chef bring whatever you think my guest would like. I've heard him, so this could be it for you, my friend. All right, Paul. True or false? Maynard High School once lost a game to Marlborough High by a score of 100 to 13.
Can I ask what sport, at least?
A basketball game.
Okay.
Didn't I say that?
Well,
Let me read it again.
I mean,
Maynard High
maybe
once
football, I
lost
suppose, but-
a basketball game to Marlborough High by a score of 100 to 13. True or false?
I'm going to say true.
Yeah, we have a winner today. Let's.
Wow.
So the crowd's going wild. This thing's getting sick. It doesn't even sound like a crowd anymore. It sounds like somebody running water. Well, congratulations to Paul Matthews as a new champion. So you have a lunch at venue is at your choice, and I'll talk to Mr. Scribner McLean about that, and he'll set it up with you. He'll be in touch with you.
Well, what an awesome finale to my St. Patrick's Day, and I'll look forward to touring the theater when I come back for lunch.
It is great. But all kidding aside, Paul, thank you so much for taking the time to come visit us, and I really appreciate you really much spent the day out here with us and all the work that you're doing. I think that Maynard is really enjoying its partnership and looking forward to what the next couple of years bring. And thanks for taking the time to come on the show.
I'm happy to. This is an honor and a privilege, and it is undoubtedly the best rock and roll and planning show I've ever been on.
Number one in Maynard High School, you know?
Yes.
Okay, everybody, so I will see you next week. I'm Town Planner Bill Nemser, Planning, Zoning, Rock and Rolling. We have some special guests are getting booked, and it's going to be a nonstop barrage of pretty interesting guests for the rest of the year. And then, what do I take the summer off, right?
Yes.
And then what am I going to do without you guys there? Oh, my God.
Suffer, I guess.
Oh, you gotta get me somebody. How are we gonna fill your shoes? Jeez. Well, anyway, I'm going to leave you with another St. Patrick's Day. Well, I don't know if it's a St. Patrick's Day song, but I have to say, my kids have been talking about this band forever. Okay, and I knew the name, and I said, I don't know who these guys are. But I was talking about, and I said, oh, it's a great Boston band. They play Irish music and Irish theme music, and it's the Dropkick Murphys. Now, I've heard that name a million times, but I was like, I don't know any of the songs. And then I played, one of my kids played their CDs. I know like every song on it. So I think that's going to be our closing cut today. And I hope you game to come on again, Paul?
Always game. Anytime to come out to Maynard, Bill.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks again. And thank you, everybody, for listening. It's Planning, Zoning, Rock and Rolling. And we will see you next Thursday at 3 p.m., same time. And I don't know who the guest is right yet, but we will have a full slate. And I hope you all have a wonderful St. Patrick's Day. And I will do my best to find some corned beef and cabbage because I haven't been lucky so far.